My sister said, "Pay up or step aside." In court, and my parents stood demanding that I pay child. My name is Olivia Hartfield. I'm 32 years old, I'm an accountant, and I live in Boston. They said family always comes first. I just never realized I'd be the one they'd line up to pay the bill. The gavel struck the wood. The sound was flat and final. It cut through the quiet humming of the air conditioner. "Mrs. Hartfield," the judge said. His voice was tired. He looked at me over the top of his glasses. "Are you prepared to provide financial support for your sister's child?" I looked at him. I didn't look at my sister. I didn't look at my parents. I just looked at this man I had never met. This judge who held my whole life in his hands. The air in the courtroom was thick. It smelled like old paper and cheap floor polish. I could feel the hard back of the wooden bench against my spine. I sat perfectly still. I am an accountant. I deal in numbers. Numbers are clean. Numbers are honest. This room was the opposite. It was filled with lies. Clara, my sister, stood beside her attorney. She wasn't an accountant. She was a dreamer, or so my parents always said. I thought she was just lazy. Her voice dripped with triumph. It was a sound I had known my whole life. It was the sound of her getting exactly what she wanted, no matter who it hurt. She agreed to help, Clara said loudly, to the whole room. It's her responsibility, too. She promised. And before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, and drop a comment to tell me where you are watching from. I felt my lawyer shift beside me. I had told him she would lie. He hadn't fully believed me. He did now. My mother, sitting in the first row behind Clara, nodded. She was tearful. She was always tearful when Clara needed something. Her tears were a weapon. They had been used against me since I was a child. "It's true, Your Honor," my mother whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Olivia always said she would take care of us." My father was next to her. He didn't look tearful. He looked angry. He folded his arms across his chest. His suit was too tight. I recognized it. I had bought it for him 2 Christmases ago. "You've always had more than her, Olivia," my father said, his voice booming. He wasn't talking to the judge. He was talking to me. "It's time to share. Your sister is struggling. Be a family." The courtroom was silent. This was it. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The moment they would finally break me. They had taken my husband. They had taken my peace. Now they wanted my money. The judge looked back at me. His face was blank. "Well, Mrs. Hartfield, did you make this promise?" I felt a small, strange feeling in my chest. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was peace. I let out a slow breath. I had practiced this. For months, I had practiced this. Then I smiled. It was a small smile. Just for me. Because what none of them knew, what I'd been quietly building for months, was about to turn their little performance into their undoing. Clara thought she had cornered me. My parents thought their guilt trip would work, one last time. They didn't know me at all. They saw me as a resource, a bank, an open wallet. They forgot that I am an accountant. I count everything, I track everything, and I never, ever forget a debt. "Your Honor," I said, my voice clear and steady. It didn't shake. I was proud of that. "May I present my own records?" Clara's smile faltered. My father leaned forward. My mother's crying stopped. This wasn't part of their plan. Clara and I were born 15 months apart. I was the older one, the responsible one, the quiet one. I was the planner, the one who made things work. Clara was the dreamer, the wild one, the one my parents adored, no matter what she broke. I learned about my job in the family very early. When I was 6, I saved up my allowance for 3 months to buy a porcelain doll. It had blue glass eyes and a yellow dress. I loved it. I kept it on a high shelf so it would be safe. Clara wanted to play with it. I said no. I told her it wasn't a play toy. It was for looking. The next day, I came home from school and found the doll in the driveway. Its face was cracked. The yellow dress was dirty. I ran inside, crying. My mother was in the kitchen cutting vegetables. Clara was sitting at the table eating a cookie. She broke it. I screamed. She broke my doll. My mother sighed. She didn't even look up. "Olivia, don't be selfish. You should have shared with your sister." Clara smiled at me, a little milk mustache on her lip. "It was an accident," she said. "It's just a doll," my father said later that night. "You're the older sister. You should be more mature. You can always get another one." But I couldn't get another one. I had spent all my money. That was the first lesson. My work meant nothing. Her wants meant everything. It wasn't favoritism, not exactly. It was an ecosystem. I was the tree, and she was the vine that wraps around the tree and chokes it. But everyone says, look how beautifully they grow together. When I was in high school, I got a job at a local diner. I saved every penny. I bought my own first car, a rusty blue Toyota. Clara, when she turned 16, didn't get a job. She said working was for uncreative people. My parents co-signed a loan for her. She got a brand new red convertible. She has more friends, Olivia, my mom explained, as if that made sense. She needs to be able to drive them around. When I got my acceptance letter to college, with a half scholarship for my grades, my father nodded. Good, he said. Accounting, smart. You'll make good money. When Clara announced she wasn't going to college, that she was going to find herself in Europe, my parents threw her a party. They cashed out a bond they had told me was for both your educations. It paid for her trip. She came back 3 months later, broken, complaining. This pattern repeated over and over. When I got my first internship at a Boston firm, I was so proud. I had worked so hard. I called home to tell them. My mother's voice was flat. That's nice, dear. But listen, don't brag about it, okay? You'll make your sister feel small. She's going through a hard time. I looked at the phone. What hard time? She got fired again, Mom said. Clara got fired from 3 jobs in a row. A coffee shop, a bookstore, an office where she was a receptionist. My parents said she was finding herself. The world is just too harsh for a sensitive soul like Clara, my mother would say. I was not a sensitive soul. I was the reliable one. I graduated. I got my CPA. I started making good money. And as soon as I did, the call started. Olivia, darling, your sister just needs a little help with her rent this month. Olivia, Clara's car broke down. Could you just help with the repair bill? Olivia, she wants to take this art class. It would be so good for her spirit. It was an ecosystem. And I was the one funding it. I paid. I paid because it was easier than the fight. It was easier than the guilt trips. It was easier than hearing my father's disappointed voice. I thought we raised you to be generous, Olivia. I paid, and they smiled, and Clara dreamed. I didn't know that I was just practicing. I was practicing for the main event. I was practicing for them to take everything. I was the good daughter. The quiet one. The one who made things work. I was so busy being the tree, I didn't realize they were all holding axes. I met Daniel at a conference. A boring, sensible accounting conference in a gray hotel ballroom. He was different. He wasn't a dreamer. He wasn't wild. He was a builder. He had a small construction business. He built decks, repaired foundations. He built small, steady things. He was quiet. He was kind. He listened to me. When I told him about my job, he didn't ask how much money I made. He asked what I liked about it. I like the order, I told him, sipping a stale coffee. I like when everything balances to 0. He smiled. I'm the same, he said. I like when a line is perfectly level. I fell in love with him. I fell in love with his steadiness. He felt like a safe harbor. My family was a storm. Daniel was a quiet, solid house. We dated for a year. He was patient. He understood my long hours during tax season. I helped him organize his receipts and invoices. We were a good team. He met my family at a barbecue. My parents, of course, loved him. He was successful. He was handsome. Clara met him too. I saw the way she looked at him. It was the same way she had looked at my porcelain doll. I should have known then. I should have packed up my quiet, solid house and run. But I thought he was different. I thought he was mine. Clara was engaged to someone else at the time. A musician. My parents hated him. He's so unstable, my mother said. Clara started coming over to our apartment. My apartment, really? Daniel had just moved in. I just need to get away from the drama, she'd say, flopping onto my sofa. You and Daniel are so lucky. You're so normal. She would bring Daniel coffee when he was working on a site near her apartment. Just being friendly, she'd say. She started texting him. Olivia is so lucky to have you, Daniel. She's so strong. I wish I had someone strong like that. I'm having a crisis with my fiancé. Could I just get your advice? A man's perspective? I saw the texts. I told myself it was fine. Daniel told me she was just a kid. She was 28. It started as friendly texts. Then it was helpful car rides. Then it was accidental late nights. Daniel started coming home late. A client emergency? He'd say. Or just had to help Clara with a flat tire. He started to smell different. Not like sawdust and sweat. He smelled like Clara's perfume. It was a heavy, sweet smell. Jasmine. The night I knew, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. It was 2 a.m. I was in bed. He was in the shower. He said he'd been working late on a bid. His phone lit up on the nightstand, a text from Clara. Last night was amazing. I can't believe you're really leaving her. He's going to be so mad. I just stared. My heart didn't break. It just stopped. I felt the blood drain from my face. I went cold. Betrayal doesn't always come like thunder. Sometimes it seeps in quietly. It's a slow leak, a hairline crack in the foundation, until the whole house is flooded, and you can't remember what peace sounds like. He came out of the bathroom, a towel around his waist. You're still awake? I looked at him. My quiet, solid house. He was just a building. And it was rotten. Her perfume is on your skin, I said. My voice was a whisper. He didn't even have the decency to lie. He just looked at the floor. Liv, he started. It just happened. Get out, I said. He left. He packed a bag and he left. He went straight to her. 3 months later, they were together. Officially. No apology. No explanation. Just a family announcement at Sunday dinner. I only went because my mother had cried on the phone. Please, Olivia. We need to heal as a family. I walked in. Clara was there, holding Daniel's hand. She was wearing my old engagement ring, the one Daniel had given me. She had gotten it sized down. My parents clapped. We have wonderful news, my father announced. Daniel and Clara are engaged. I looked at my mother. She was beaming. Love finds its own way, my mother said, looking right at me. We're just so happy Clara has finally found someone steady. Someone to take care of her. I looked at Daniel. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Clara. She smiled at me. The same smile from when we were kids. The smile that said, I win. I didn't say anything. I just stood up. I walked out that night, and I never came back. I built a new life. A smaller, sharper life. I moved to a new apartment in a different part of Boston. A clean white box in the sky. I sold the condo I had shared with Daniel. I took the loss. I just wanted it gone. I threw myself into my work. I worked 80-hour weeks. I got a promotion. Then another. I was good at my job. My job made sense. The numbers always balanced. People were the problem. People were chaos. I didn't speak to my family. They tried at first, my mother called. I don't understand why you're doing this, Olivia. We're your family. You can't just cut us off. It's not Christian. Was it Christian to celebrate my fiancé leaving me for my sister? I asked. She started to cry. You're twisting my words. Clara is just so vulnerable. She needs a good man. You're strong. You'll be fine. Goodbye, Mom, I said. I hung up. My father called next. He didn't wheedle. He yelled, Who do you think you are? Your mother is a mess. You owe your sister an apology. An apology for what? For making this so difficult. For being so selfish. I hung up on him, too. After that, they stopped. For a while, there was silence. The silence was wonderful. It was the sound of me healing. It was the sound of me balancing my own books for the first time in my life. Then, a year later, Clara had a baby girl. I found out on social media. A friend from high school sent me a link. A picture of Clara glowing in a hospital bed. Daniel, looking tired and proud. And a small, red-faced baby. They named her Grace. I stared at the name. Grace. Something my family knew nothing about. A week later, a thick, cream-colored envelope arrived at my office. An announcement card. A picture of the baby I didn't visit. I didn't send a gift. I sent a quiet card. I bought it at a pharmacy. It had a picture of a duck on it. Inside, I wrote 5 words. May she never learn deceit. I signed my name. The messages started soon after. First, the texts from my mother. She's your niece, Olivia. She's an innocent baby. Don't you want to see her? I deleted the text, then the calls. I let them go to voicemail. Olivia, honey, it's Mom. Listen, Daniel lost his job. The construction business. It's just not working out. They're having a very hard time. Clara can't balance motherhood and work. She's just so overwhelmed. Click. Delete. Olivia, it's your father. I am not calling to ask. I am calling to tell you. Your sister needs help. You make 6 figures. We know what you make. We saw your alumni magazine feature. Oh, God. The alumni magazine. I had been so proud of that. Be a good sister. His voice boomed from my phone speaker. Help them with the child's expenses. It's the least you can do. I deleted the voicemail. My mother called again. It's the Christian thing to do, Olivia. The baby needs formula. The baby needs diapers. What if she gets sick? You have so much. They have so little. I hung up. I blocked their numbers. The quiet returned. For 3 weeks it was quiet. I should have known. The quiet is always just a battlefield reloading. The next week I got a letter. It wasn't from my family. It was from a law firm, Reeves Viges Hartfield. I opened it. My hands were shaking. It was a petition for child support. They were suing me. My sister and my ex-fiancé were suing me for support for their child. I read the document. It was full of lies. Ms. Hartfield made a verbal and written commitment to provide for her sister, Clara Reeves, and any dependents in the event of financial hardship. Ms. Hartfield has acted as a parental figure and financial guarantor for Ms. Reeves for over a decade. Ms. Hartfield's established pattern of payment demonstrates a clear in loco parentis relationship. They were taking my kindness and twisting it into a weapon. They were taking my years of being the good daughter and turning it into a legal contract. I sat at my desk. The white, clean desk in my white, clean apartment. I didn't cry. I got angry. It was a cold, clean, perfect anger. It was an anger that balanced to zero. I picked up the phone. I called the best lawyer I could find. They want to fight? I whispered to the empty room. Fine, I'll bring the receipts. My lawyer's name was Arthur. He was old, expensive, and looked like he ate bad news for breakfast. I sat in his office. It was all dark wood and leather books. This is ambitious, Arthur said, reading the petition. He looked at me over his glasses, just like the judge had, but his eyes were sharp. They're trying to claim you're a de facto parent because you paid her rent? I paid her rent. I paid her car bills. I paid for her art classes. I paid for her European trip. My parents, they encouraged it. They said it was my job as the successful sister. And you have records of this? I slid a binder across his desk. A thick, black 3-ring binder. I'm an accountant, I said. I have records of everything. He opened the binder. He flipped through the pages. Bank statements. Check copies. Emails from my mother. Olivia, Clara just needs $500 for a deposit. Emails from my father. Your sister's car insurance is due. Handle it. Arthur was silent for a full 5 minutes. He just read. Then he closed the binder. He looked at me. They are very, very stupid, he said. That's not what I'm worried about, I said. I pulled out another file. This one was thinner. This is the real trap. He opened the second file. They had filed documents. They stated that Daniel's business debts, the ones that had bankrupted him, were tied to our old marital account, an account I had thought was closed, an account that I had opened with him. When we first moved in together, these loans were taken. After you separated? Arthur asked, his voice sharp. A month after, I have the bank statements showing a zero balance when I left. But I must have forgotten to get my name fully removed. I was a mess. I just wanted out. I thought he'd be decent and close it. He wasn't decent, Arthur said. He and your sister used it. They're claiming that because my name was on the account, I am liable for his business debt. And they're claiming that his business debt is why they can't afford to care for their child. Therefore, I am responsible. It was a calculated ambush. It was brilliant, in its own terrible way. It wasn't just about the child support. That was the hook. The real prize was the business debt. They were trying to make me pay for the failure of the man who left me. Clara's idea, I was sure of it. Daniel wasn't this smart. This was my sister, the dreamer. She had been dreaming of this. They knew that if I couldn't prove separation before the loans were taken, I could be held financially responsible, I said. They're trying to bankrupt me. Arthur leaned back. This is beyond family law. This is fraud. I know, I said. But we have to prove it. We had 2 months before the hearing. I went home. I went to my clean white apartment. And I packed it up. I put my furniture in storage. I moved into a cheap extended stay hotel. I took a leave of absence from my job. I told my boss it was a family emergency. He understood. Then I went to work. I didn't just need a lawyer. I needed someone who could follow the money. I needed someone like me. I hired a forensic accountant. A woman named Rita. She was even scarier than Arthur. For 6 weeks, we lived in a conference room. We had whiteboards. We had spreadsheets. We drank stale coffee and ate bad takeout. We pulled every transaction, every email, every text message, and we found it. We found the emails between Daniel and the bank. We found the loan applications. And then we found the crown jewel. Rita called me over. You need to see this. It was an IP log. An email from Daniel to his loan officer, sent 3 weeks after I left him. It had a signed personal guarantee attached, but the IP address, it wasn't from Daniel's new apartment. It wasn't from his office. It was from a coffee shop, the one 2 blocks from my parents' house. Rita clicked a few more keys. And look at this. A text message. From Clara to a friend. We had gotten her phone records in Discovery. The text was from the same day. The same time. Friend. How are you going to get the money? Clara, don't worry. Liv's name is on everything. She's so stupid. She's so focused on being right, she won't even see us coming. Rita and I looked at each other. That's not all, Rita said. She pulled up another file. A social media post. Clara's. From the same day. A picture of her, smiling, holding a latte. The caption? Making big moves. Sometimes you have to be your own hero. The geotag? The coffee shop. 2 blocks from my parents' house. She hadn't just known. She had done it. She had forged my signature. Or, just as bad, she had convinced Daniel to do it, using my old digital files. My hands were steady. I didn't shake, I just saved the file. Exhibit A, fraud.pdf. The night before the hearing, my phone lit up. It was a text. From a number I didn't recognize. It's Clara. I stared at it. We're in court tomorrow. This is your last chance to be a decent person. Just give us what we want and it all goes away. Pay up or step aside. Step aside. As if I was the one in her way. As if she hadn't taken everything. I didn't reply. I just turned off my phone. I went to sleep. I had a big day tomorrow. I had receipts to file. The morning of the hearing, I woke up before the alarm. It was 5 a.m. The cheap polyester curtains of my extended stay hotel room were a sickly yellow color. The room smelled like stale air and old carpet. I had been living there for 6 weeks. My nice apartment, my white clean box in the sky, was in storage. My life was in cardboard boxes. I got up. I didn't feel tired. I felt sharp. I went to the small kitchenette and made a cup of instant coffee. I stood by the window, looking down at an empty parking lot. They thought I was in that apartment. They thought I was crying. They thought I was broken. They thought I was scared, trying to figure out how to pay them. They thought they had cornered me. I took a sip of the bad coffee. It was bitter but hot. I thought about Clara's text. Pay up or step aside. It was so like her. She thought there were only 2 options, her winning or her winning another way. She couldn't imagine a third option. She couldn't imagine me. I had spent my entire life stepping aside. I stepped aside for the broken doll. I stepped aside for the new car. I stepped aside for the trip to Europe. When she took Daniel, I stepped aside. When they announced their engagement at Sunday dinner, I stepped aside. I was the queen of stepping aside, and they had built their entire world on that one fact. They built their house on my aside. They were so used to me moving. They didn't know what would happen if I finally stood still. I turned from the window. For months, I'd been collecting everything. When I first left Daniel, I was just surviving. I was just trying to breathe. But when that lawsuit came, the shock woke me up. It was like a bucket of ice water. The grief was gone. The hurt was gone. All that was left was the math. I am an accountant. My brain is built on a simple rule. Everything must balance. And this was so unbalanced. I had hired Rita, the forensic accountant. We didn't just look at the bank records. We pulled everything, my old emails. I had saved them. Mom, I am sending you $1,000 for Clara's deposit. Please make sure she pays me back. Dad, here is the proof of payment for Clara's car insurance. This is the last time. It was never the last time. We had the timestamps from the bank. We had the IP logs. We had the text messages. Clara's text messages to her friends were a special kind of masterpiece. Daniel is a mess. But he's cute. And Liv's name is still on the business account. LOL. I'm moving in. He's so grateful I'm saving him from his cold fiancé. Men are so easy. Just used Liv's old info to guarantee the new loan. She won't even notice. She's too busy working. My parents are totally on my side. They just want me to be taken care of. It's about time. I had read them all. I had put them in a spreadsheet. I cross-referenced them with bank withdrawals and loan application dates. I didn't cry when I read them. I just highlighted them in yellow. Today was not about feelings. Today was about facts. I took a shower. The water pressure was terrible. I got dressed. I had one suit. I had bought it for this day. It was dark charcoal gray. It was not a power suit, it was armor. I wore a plain white blouse. I pulled my hair back into a tight, severe bun. No makeup except for a little powder. I didn't want to look emotional. I didn't want to look anything. I wanted to look like a balance sheet. I packed my briefcase. One binder for me. One binder for my lawyer, Arthur. One very thick 3-ring binder for the judge. And copies for the other side. I walked out of the hotel. I didn't take a cab. I walked the 10 blocks to the courthouse. It was a cold, bright Boston morning. People were rushing to work, holding coffee cups, looking at their phones. I felt completely calm. I remembered being in a play in high school. I was a tree. I had one line. I was terrified. I was backstage, my hands shaking, feeling sick. Today, my hands weren't shaking. I didn't feel sick. This wasn't a play. This was an audit. And I was the auditor. I met Arthur in the lobby. He was wearing his old expensive suit. He looked at me and nodded. "You're ready," he said. It wasn't a question. "I'm ready," I said. We went through security. We went up in the elevator. We walked into the courtroom. It was small. The same room as before, and they were already there. Clara, Daniel, my mother, my father. They were sitting in the front row, on the opposite side. They were a little family. Clara was wearing a light blue dress. She looked soft. She looked like a mother. She looked vulnerable. She was holding a tissue. She had probably been practicing her crying. Daniel looked terrible. He looked like he hadn't slept. His suit was wrinkled. He was fidgeting. He wouldn't look at me. My mother was sitting next to Clara, her arm around her. She was whispering to her, comforting her. She was glaring at me. Her face said, "Look what you've done to your sister." My father sat on the end. He just looked angry. He was staring at me. His arms were crossed. He was trying to intimidate me. The way he always had. I sat down next to Arthur. I placed my briefcase on the floor. I opened my binder. I took out a pen. I didn't look at them. I just looked straight ahead. At the judge's empty chair. Clara thought she had cornered me. My parents thought they could guilt me. I came armed with facts. And the first rule of accounting is that facts don't care about your feelings. The gavel struck. The judge sat down. "Reeves versus Hartfield," he said, his voice echoing in the small room. Clara's lawyer went first. He was young, with a cheap suit and too much hair gel. He gave a long, sad speech. He painted a picture of a struggling young mother, a woman abandoned by her cold, wealthy, childless sister. "My client, Clara Reeves, is a new mother," he said, his voice thick with fake sympathy. Her sister, Olivia Hartfield, a woman of considerable means, promised to care for her. She promised to support her. And when Clara needed her most, when this beautiful baby girl, Grace, was born, Olivia Hartfield turned her back. Clara, right on cue, let out a small, quiet sob. My mother rubbed her back. "They are not asking for much, Your Honor," the lawyer said. "Just what was promised." "Just a little help," he went on. He brought up the business debts. Daniel Reeves's business failed. It was a tragedy, and it was tied to an account he shared with Ms. Hartfield. She bears that responsibility. Her refusal to help is what has left this child, this innocent baby, without the support she deserves. The lawyer sat down. He looked very proud of himself. The judge looked at the paperwork. He sighed. Then he turned to me. "Mrs. Hartfield," he said. He still called me Mrs. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" This was it. Arthur stood up. "Your Honor, Ms. Hartfield will be speaking for herself. This was Arthur's idea." He said, "Let them hear it from you. Let the judge see you." I stood up, slow and calm. The room was silent. I could feel all their eyes on me. Clara, Daniel, my parents. I buttoned the single button on my charcoal gray jacket. "Yes, Your Honor," I said. My voice was clear. It didn't shake. "I do." I picked up the thick 3-ring binder. The one labeled Exhibit A. I walked to the front. I gave one copy to Clara's lawyer. I gave one to the judge's clerk. Clara's lawyer flipped it open, annoyed. He thought it was just bank statements. "Your Honor," I said, walking back to my table. I opened my own copy. "My sister and her lawyer have built a story. I am here to provide the facts." I turned to the first tab. Page 1 is my final bank statement from the joint account, dated 3 days after I left Mr. Reeves. You will see the balance was 0. The account was closed by me. Clara's lawyer stood up. "Objection." "What is this?" It's Discovery Council, Arthur said without even standing. You've had it for a week. Maybe you should have read it. The judge waved his hand. Continue, Ms. Hartfield. Page 2, I said, is the loan application from Mr. Reeves, the first of 3. You will note the date. It is 2 weeks after I closed the account. You will also note that the account number is different. He had opened a new account, a new business account, under a similar name, but it was not my account. I could see Daniel start to sweat. Page 3 is the signature page for that loan. It required a personal guarantor. I looked up. I looked straight at Clara. Her face was starting to get pale. Mr. Reeves was not creditworthy. His business was already failing. The bank required a cosigner. Daniel Reeves's signature is on the first line. My sister, Clara Reeves. Her signature is on the second, my mother gasped. No, she whispered. That's not true. Objection, the lawyer yelled, standing up. This is irrelevant. It is extremely relevant, counsel, the judge said. His voice was cold. He was reading ahead. It speaks to the financial state of the plaintiffs. I turned the page. Furthermore, Your Honor, my sister and Mr. Reeves knew they couldn't get the loans they needed. So they escalated. Page 10. This is a different loan application. A larger one. From a different bank. I paused. This was the one. This application was submitted online. The bank, seeing my name in the system from my old closed account, requested a digital confirmation. I have, on page 12, the IP logs from that confirmation. The electronic signature? It was not sent from my apartment. It was not sent from my office. I looked at Clara again. She was starting to shake. It was sent from a public Wi-Fi network. The IP address is for the coffee shop on the corner of Elm and Oak, 2 blocks from our parents' house. I turned the page. On page 13, you will see a social media post. From my sister Clara. She is at that coffee shop. On that day. At that time. Her caption reads, Making big moves. And on page 14, a text message from my sister to a friend, sent 10 minutes later. Just used Liv's old info to guarantee the new loan. She won't even notice. She's too busy working. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Clara's lawyer was speechless. He was just staring at the page. Your Honor, I said, my voice growing stronger. My sister didn't just know about the debt. She acquired it. She and Daniel Reeves knowingly used my identity and my pre-divorce account access. Access I thought was sealed, for financial gain. They committed identity theft. They committed bank fraud. And they committed tax fraud. By filing for benefits using an income statement that was based on those fraudulent loans. The color drained from their faces. All of them. My mother's mouth was open. She looked horrified. My father was standing up. That's a lie. You're lying, Olivia. Sit down. The judge roared. My father, for the first time in his life, did what he was told. He fell back into the bench, Clara was whispering. I could just hear her. She was leaning across the table to her lawyer. She wouldn't dare, she whispered. She wouldn't dare. I looked at her. I looked at my little sister, the dreamer, the one everyone had to protect. I looked at the woman who had stolen my fiancé, my peace, and then tried to steal my future. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just spoke the truth. You dared first. The judge stared at the papers. He wasn't flipping anymore. He was reading. The silence in the courtroom was a new kind. It wasn't the silence of waiting. It was the silence of an execution. I could hear Clara breathing. It was fast and shallow. She was starting to hyperventilate. My mother was crying, but not her usual weaponized tears. These were real. They were tears of shock. She was finally seeing the snake in the garden. She just didn't realize she had helped raise it. My father just looked old. The anger was gone. He just looked deflated. The judge closed the binder. He put his hands on top of it. He looked at Clara and Daniel. Mr. Reeves, Mrs. Reeves. He didn't call her Mrs. anymore. Your lawyer. Do you have anything to say about this evidence? Clara's lawyer stood up. He looked sick. Your Honor, we were not aware. This is a clear family dispute? A family dispute? The judge cut him off. Counsel, I am looking at bank fraud. I am looking at perjury. You filed a sworn statement with this court, claiming your clients were destitute. You failed to mention why. You failed to mention that their destitution is a direct result of their own criminal activity. Your Honor, I must... Sit down, counsel. You are dangerously close to being sanctioned, the lawyer sat. The judge turned to me. His face was soft for a moment. Ms. Hartfield. You have been through an ordeal. I am sorry for the court's time." Then he looked back at them. The steel returned. He picked up the gavel. "The petition for child support, Reeves versus Hartfield, is dismissed with prejudice. Meaning, you can never file it again." Gavel. Bang. The claims of financial responsibility against Ms. Hartfield are found to be not only false, but fraudulent. Gavel. Bang. "And finally," he said, looking at my thick black binder, "the evidence of bank fraud, identity theft, and perjury presented in Exhibit A is compelling. This court's jurisdiction is child support. I cannot rule on these matters. However, I am referring this entire file and a transcript of this hearing to the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Massachusetts. Your counterclaims for fraud and identity misuse, Ms. Hartfield, will be heard. Just not by me. My parents didn't understand what that meant. Clara did. Daniel did. Clara made a sound. A small choking sound. My mother finally broke. No, she shouted, standing up. You can't! She's your sister. Olivia, stop this. Tell him to stop. It's your sister. The judge silenced her with the gavel. A hard, final bang. Ma'am, sit down. This is a court of law. She turned to me. Olivia, please. You've made your point. Don't do this to her. Don't do this to us. I just looked at her. I didn't say anything. The judge leaned over the bench. He spoke to my mother, but his words were for me. Family is not immunity, he said, his voice quiet, but carrying across the room. Family is not a blank check. Family is not an excuse to destroy someone. I felt something in my chest. A small, tight knot that I had carried since I was 6 years old. The knot that formed when I saw my broken doll in the driveway. And for the first time, it dissolved. I felt seen. I wasn't the selfish one. I wasn't the cold one. I wasn't the unchristian one. I was the one who had survived. I stood up. I picked up my briefcase. Arthur stood with me. He put his hand on my back. This way, Ms. Hartfield, he said. I walked out of the courtroom. I didn't look back. I didn't look at Clara, who was now sobbing into Daniel's wrinkled suit. I didn't look at my father, who was holding his head in his hands. I didn't look at my mother, who was staring at me with a look of pure animal terror. I just walked out. Into the hallway. I walked to the elevator and pressed the button. I felt quiet. It wasn't victory. It wasn't joy. It was balance. The ledger, after all these years, was finally, perfectly balanced to zero. The consequences didn't happen all at once. It wasn't like a movie. It was a slow, quiet unraveling. Arthur called me a week later. The DA's office is taking it, he said. The U.S. attorney. They are very interested, especially in the bank fraud. They don't like being lied to. What does that mean? I asked. I was back in my clean white apartment. The boxes were gone. I was unpacking my life. It means they're indicting Daniel. And they're offering Clara a deal. If she testifies against him fully, she might avoid jail time. But she's not getting away clean. Not with the identity theft. That was her. I hung up. I looked around my living room. I had bought a new sofa. A blue one. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I just felt a fact. This was a fact. A month later, Clara's accounts were frozen. All of them. The bank that she and Daniel had defrauded. They came for their money. And they came hard. Daniel was arrested. He faced criminal charges for wire fraud. He didn't have money for a good lawyer. He used a public defender. He was found guilty. He was sentenced to 3 years in a federal prison. The news came to me in an email from Arthur. I read it. I closed the email. I went back to work. My life was quiet. I was working. I was sleeping. I was for the first time breathing. And then the phone rang. It was a Sunday morning. I was making coffee. It was a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. I had a new rule. If you don't have a name, I don't have time. A minute later, the voicemail icon popped up. I pressed play. My mother's voice. She was hysterical. Olivia! Olivia, pick up the phone! You have to pick up the phone. It's... Oh God, Olivia, they're taking the house. I frowned. They're taking our house. She screamed. The bank. They're foreclosing! We got a notice. We're losing the house. There was fumbling. My father's voice. Your mother is right, he said. His voice was broken. I had never heard him sound broken. He was always so angry, so strong. We co-signed. For Clara. After you left. She and Daniel. They needed a place. They said it was just a formality. We co-signed on their new loans. The ones you found, I stopped. I sat down on my new blue sofa. They had co-signed the fraudulent loans. We didn't know, Olivia. My mother was crying again. We didn't know it was that much. We thought she was just getting on her feet. And now, the bank says, with Daniel in prison and Clara's accounts, it's all on us. A long, terrible pause. Then, my father's voice, low and shaking with a new kind of rage. This is your fault, he whispered. You did this. You could have just paid her. You could have just helped. But you had to be right. You had to bring it all down. He hung up. I sat in the silence of my apartment. The sun was streaming in. This is your fault. We didn't know it would go this far. They still didn't see. They couldn't see. They still thought I was the one who lit the match. They didn't understand that they had been living in a house soaked in gasoline for 30 years. I had been the fire extinguisher. I had been the warning system. I had been the one running around, putting out their little fires. I hadn't taken anything from them. I'd just stopped giving. I stopped being the tree that held up the vine. I stopped being the bank. I stopped being the quiet, reliable one. When I stepped away, the whole rotten structure they had built, it just fell. That's not destruction. That's gravity. I picked up the phone. I looked at their voicemail. I pressed delete. 6 months later, I stood by the window of my new apartment. It wasn't the white box. This one was different. It was in an old brick building. It had hardwood floors that creaked. It had high ceilings. It overlooked the Charles River. I watched the scullers cutting through the water. The light was gold. It was early evening. The light hit a glass on my table and it threw a small rainbow on the wall. I thought about them. Clara took the deal. She testified against Daniel. She got 5 years of probation and had to pay a fine I knew she could never afford. She was living with a friend. She had lost her baby. Grace was in temporary foster care until Clara stabilized. My parents lost their house. They were renting a small apartment in a bad neighborhood. My mother was working as a cashier. My father was a greeter at a big box store. They were broken. I didn't feel joy. I just felt the quiet. I whispered to myself, peace isn't revenge. Revenge is loud. Revenge is angry. Revenge is still about them. This was peace. Peace is proof they no longer control you. Peace is a ledger that is finally balanced. Peace is a quiet apartment, a view of the river, and a future that belongs only to me. If you've ever been blamed for what you didn't do, or forced to clean up what others broke, hit like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Because silence doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes, it's the sound of winning.